In this series, we've been talking about data, how it's reported, and how it should be reported, and how it can be used. But we wanted to take a few minutes to talk about the issue of data quality, because if you don't have quality data and you're not confident in it, you're not going to use it. So I think data quality has to go hand in hand with all this other stuff we're talking about how to use the data and how to report the data. In national meetings with federal government, discussing NRS issues, Craig's been involved with that sort of thing, and they talk about fostering a culture of data quality. And it's kind of a nebulous concept, I think, but maybe you can kind of flesh that out. What does that mean?
Well, from NRS's perspective, they view a culture as a way of being, a way of doing things that is over and above the minimal. And there is a infused support for all of the parts of making data work. Now, that being said, data, their view of data is not everything. It's not the end all or be all. The data is more like a context or a working background for everything that a program does. And that is like if you look at a painting, and a painting may have several objects in it, but the background is really what makes the painting pop, or the frame will make a painting pop. And so they say that the data, high quality data, makes your painting, whatever you're doing with your students, much more valued and usable. And what's really good about data is it's also measurable, especially if it's useful data that gives you much more ammo for what you want to do or what you want to change, or in your world of adult education, how you work with your students is very, very important. And the efficiency and effectiveness of the program shows up in your data. So the federal concept of the culture of data quality is where everyone in the system, the staff people, the data entry people, the teachers, everybody have access to data on a frequent basis, not once a year, and that they look at it, they have input on it, they can make corrections, they are taught how to use it appropriately for making things happen, for improving the quality of the program, not just improving the quality of the data. That's really what they want in terms of a culture.
The way I see it, it's sort of creating a virtuous cycle where you've got the more you use the data, the higher quality the data will be.
Yes.
And the higher the data quality is, the more likely you're to use it. So it's sort of a positive feedback loop. Yes. In a way. And I always talk, when I go out in the field and talk to folks, when I talk to MIS people and I talk to program folks, and often there's sort of a organizational and maybe cultural firewall between the two. Speak different languages, do things differently. I stress to both that they need to be communicating with each other, because the places that have really high quality data are the places where there's a good working relationship between the program staff and the data staff. And then conversely, the places that run into a lot of trouble often are those that don't really communicate very well.
We have all the districts and colleges have identified these people. We refer to them as reports coordinators. And in these organizations, the reports coordinators are the people who are responsible for looking at and getting the state reports that we send back to you of your data, and they're responsible for disseminating them out to the world that needs to look at them. Unfortunately, districts have not, and for the most part, are not using the reports coordinators as frequently and as often and as We would like to see it happen. And in some cases, they don't even know their name. But that's a person who is a gatekeeper, so to speak, of data from the state locally. We're trying to send back stuff to people to show them where their good stuff is, show them where their errors are, and it's the barrier is there. So many times this reports coordinator is not being utilized as effectively as they could be. That's one of the things I'm seeing when I go out in the field. Do you see that at all? You've talked to anybody about that at all? Because it's scary to have that kind of one person controlling the data, okay?
Yeah, I agree, and I think that program staff really need to have an awareness level of data and how it's reported that allows them to participate in the process. Because if you just don't know, you won't know the questions to ask. You won't know what to look for. And I think, unfortunately, folks kind of have a shield of ignorance. They're phobic about data. They just don't want to know about it. The word data comes up and they just shut down. And so that's kind of used as an excuse to not get involved. So I think we need to break through that barrier. Program staff need to know certain things. For example, as Craig mentioned, who is your reports coordinator? Do you know when data are to be reported? What are the reporting periods? Some folks will ask us, so where does your data? Where does this come from? Where's this data from? And we go, well, it comes from you. and so we didn't make it up. We use the data that you submit to us. So you got to know when those data are reported, who's reporting it, who is responsible, and so that program staff can be involved in the process of data quality. And what that means, mainly, is reviewing the data that you are submitting to the state. By the time submission periods are done and the data are submitted, it's done. There's nothing you can do about it. So you need to be involved in the process so that you can review data before it's ideally before it's submitted, but at the very least between the submission of the data and the close of the survey or the reporting year. There's plenty of opportunities to review data that you've submitted to the state. Even after submission, you can look at reports. Your data folks can get you reports to look at, and just need to get involved in this process.
Getting involved in many cases starts with having coffee with somebody or having tea with somebody, because sometimes they don't even know the person's name, and just saying, listen, I need some help. Can we have coffee together? Can we meet? Just talk about what our needs are, how you work with this stuff, and then go back and forth. We don't know what the answer is locally. All we can do is make suggestions about how people need to communicate. When I go out and work with people in the field, those agencies who have wonderful working relationships, it's a breath of fresh air. And the places where I go where they're really kind of grinding it out, they get stuff done, but it's minimal. It doesn't allow them to grow in their understanding of the data and use of the data. And that's where we really want people to thrive in Florida, is the use of the data.
Well, there can be structural problems that program staff face in getting involved in the process. And we've seen this in a lot of places around the state. And that is what I call the Roach Motel problem. It's the data Roach Motel. Data go in, but they don't come out. And that is, you have a system that's provided by a vendor, and the data goes into the system, it's reported to the state, but it's an arrow that only goes one way. It doesn't ever come back to program staff. And that's a more difficult problem than just finding out who your reports coordinator is, taking that person to lunch and learning about the data, when it's reported, what data are reported, that kind of thing. how data are collected, assessment data, for example. All that stuff's great, but ideally what you need to do is you need to be able to pull reports out of your local system to be able to use the data and to look at reports even before they're submitted to the state, or to create custom reports. You can't rely on the state to provide you everything. Your best, your most granular, customizable data is going to be at the local level. So you got to be able to get data out of that local system. So there may be an issue with, with the system, the data system itself, with the vendor, and this is something that you need to be aware of once, say, a vendor's contract is up and a bid goes out to buy a new system, essentially. You might want to get involved in that process to make sure that the data system that you purchase is going to suit your needs, and you're going to be able to get data out, that it's not just a one-way street from the classroom and the assessment center to the state, but that you can use your data locally. And that's been a real problem and a source of frustration for a lot of folks at the local level.
Local data is very important, and we cannot overemphasize the need for you to have a system in place that allows you to collect local data that you can use locally, even if you don't report it to the state, because we know there are agencies out there who do it and are very, very supportive of that notion that you can collect stuff that doesn't ever come to the state. We only collect data on things we're required to collect by law, by state and federal law. That is it. There's a lot of other stuff out there that can be collected, and that's our look on that is that data is more timely, more robust, and more usable for making good quality decisions.
I agree, and so go out there, talk to folks, talk to your reports coordinator after you find out who that person is, if you don't know, and learn more about this process and get involved. And I think that could pay big dividends for improving data quality, and then also in actually using this data and getting it into people's hands so they can use it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mark.